Okay, people, here we go again. So this is the continuation of 14.1. This is the Russian Revolution. So here are some pictures. I'm not sure if I showed you these before, but just in case. So up there with the, well, they both have blue sashes. Okay, up there with the, biker mustache sort of 70s looking dude. That is Alexander the Second. That is the Tsar Liberator, the one who freed the serfs. And the one who was on his way to share power when that terrorist group blew him up. And then down below with the awesomely receding hairline and the super luxurious beard is his son, Alexander the Third, who, obviously after, his father has granted rights and freedoms, and then, his thanks for that is getting his head blown off, or actually it was his arms and legs. But, just decided he was not going to give these people anything and returned to really, really repressive rule. And he was sort of a big bear of a dude and really kind of scary. But he had a really good relationship with his youngest children. But with his oldest child, his son Nicholas II, his heir to the throne, he was very harsh. He insisted on obedience, etc., which is what he thought he needed to be. And then, of course, in the white, changing it up a little bit, is Nicholas II. He'd be the last Romanov Tsar. So the site where Alexander II was assassinated was where his son built this amazing church. As you can see, it's the iconic onion domes of Russia, and it's that red and white striped one that everybody sort of thinks about. But this is called like the Church on Spilled Blood or something like that. But of course, it sounds cooler when it's in Russian. So yeah, this is the palace that Peter built. This is Petrhof, Peter's house. Yeah, it's awesomely understated. Obviously basing it on Versailles. I'm just showing you some of the palaces. This is the Winter Palace, which is now the Hermitage, which Catherine the Great had filled with art. I'm just showing you some of the palaces that they owned. This is Tsarskoye Selo. Yeah, I think this is the Tsarskoye Selo or something like that. It's another palace, and they had like 8 to 12. So in April of 1917, trying to knock the Russians out of the war, the Germans smuggle Lenin back into Russia. The thought process, is, if we can get the Tsar to abdicate, Russia will drop out of the war. Well, the Tsar abdicates, they get a provisional temporary government, and the Tsar does not, and the Russia does not drop out of the war. The Tsar's abdication does not immediately end the Russian war effort. The provisional government was like, we need to support our allies. We signed this agreement, and whether it was the Tsar or us, we don't go back on our word. So they stayed in the war effort. So that really angered Germany. They really wanted Russia out of the war. And so they bring in like the worst troublemaker that Russia had back into Russia so that hopefully he'll make more trouble, which he, goes ahead and does. Here are some awesome postcards. This up there is the Russo-Japanese War in German, which is interesting, but you've got the Russian bear, and he's, going after the Japanese lady, geisha-looking kind of lady. And then you've got the Bloody Sunday postcard, and you have an actual painting done of what Bloody Sunday was reported to have looked like. So in 1917, at this point, the royal family, the Tsar, his wife, the 5 kids, they're all under house arrest. And they are the subject of what are we going to do with them, what are we going to do with them? And there's a lot of moderates in the provisional government. I mean, they're keeping Russia in the war. They're probably talking about either a constitutional monarchy or shipping the Tsar over to his relatives somewhere else. But in 1917, Lenin has banded together with those Soviets in charge of the cities and those other socialists and Bolsheviks within Russia, organized them and gotten them together, and he is able to knock the provisional government over. And now Lenin and the Bolsheviks are in power. He then proceeds to basically make good on his peace, land, and bread, and he gives land to the peasants, takes over the factories, kicks out the owners, gives the factories to the workers to run, and then signs a treaty with Germany, a horrible, horrible treaty, at least horrible for Russia. They give up, awesome land and, huge amounts of their own people just to get out of the war. So now suddenly you have a lot of Russians who turn around and the next day are told, nope, you're German. That doesn't sit well. That is the engagement picture of Nicholas and Alexandra. As you can tell, this story makes me a little sad. I feel bad. I'll get over it. And there they are with their first child, Olga. Remember in his diary, we heard a baby squawk. We named it Olga. We found one. Here they are with Olga, Tatiana, and Maria. And there is the Tsar with all of his children, which he loved dearly. And this was a picture taken by his wife. This is the last formal portrait of the whole family. This is the Tsar and the girls and Alexei visiting the front, during World War I. And this is just some little compilation somebody put together. This is the last known picture, at least to the best of my knowledge, the last known picture of the family together. And this was, in the months before they were executed. So, yeah, if you wonder why they don't look happy, well, it's because they've been under house arrest and shuttled here, there, and everywhere for the past year and a half, 2 years, and are not sure what's going to happen to them. So Lenin restores order, and after, of course, the assassination of the Tsars, Irina, and their children in 1917, 1918. Look it up. Anyway, so Lenin's in charge, and he stabilizes things, but the economy doesn't bounce back. And what he realizes is that pure communism is not going to work. He has got to have some kind of capitalism, just a little bit. So in March of 21, he comes out with the NEP, the new economic policy. We are entering a time in history where everything's going to have acronyms, so start getting used to it. When he allows, a corner butcher, a corner baker to own their own stores and make profit, the economy picks up. Now, this doesn't mean that, you can own a chain of bakeries, because that would be too much. And all major and heavy industry and stuff is still going to be owned by the government. But again, in theory, the government owns all the major industry, and the people own the government. Therefore, the people own everything in the major industry. By 1928, Russia's farms and factories and everything are productive again, and the government is getting back on its feet, and the economy is getting back on its feet. What he does to create political reforms is he sort of divides the country into like what we would consider states, but they're little small republics. And each little republic answers to the big government, just like us. They're little republics, vote, etc. But you have to be a communist. And so everybody's in the same party, but they have different, goals, etc. So these little republics all answer to Moscow and the major communist party, and which is why the country is called, or renamed in 22, a Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Soviets being those original committees that were running the cities. So a union of these socialist committees that are republics. And they're now calling, all the Bolsheviks are saying they're now members of the Communist Party. So what happens? Things are going good with Lenin, and then he unexpectedly suffers a stroke. Maybe it's karma for ordering the, Tsar and his family killed. He suffers a stroke, but he doesn't die right away. But he's incapacitated. So within the party is, some drama over who's going to be in charge. And most people feel it's going to be Leon Trotsky, who was the leader of the Red Army during the Civil War. He was Lenin's right-hand guy. you know, and he's the logical choice. But then up from nowhere comes this, you know, short dude with a limp named Joseph Stalin. And that's not really his real name. We'll study his real name is something impronounceable. But, you know, I'll show you at some point. Stalin is actually the name he chose for himself, which means man of steel. So he thinks he's Superman. Right. So he's actually the Communist Party General Secretary. So for the entire Communist Party, all these republics, everyone registers for the Communist Party, and he's the General Secretary. So he's in charge of everything. So he knows everything about everybody. He knows everybody's secrets. He knows everybody's hidden things. And from 1922 to 1927, he is consolidating power. He's blackmailing people. He is just outright murdering people. He's intimidating people, and he is gaining power. So in 1924, when Lenin dies, people look at Trotsky, but then they also look at Stalin, because here's one guy who would be the logical choice, but then here's this other guy that literally scares the living daylights out of you. So you're not sure, you know, who you need to side with for your own protection. And, you know, it's Stalin. And we'll talk more about Stalin later, but he gains complete control of the Communist Party in 1928. And so he is the new Lenin and proceeds to really rewrite history into making himself seem like Lenin's bestest friend. You know, early versions of Photoshop, he goes through and has people unpainted out, you know, painted out of paintings and himself painted in. It's amazing. And, you know, he obviously creates all these fake charges against anybody who was a supporter of Trotsky, gets them kicked out of Russia. Trotsky, you know, he's no dummy. He realizes which way the wind is blowing, and so he bails. Those are my keys. But nowhere is sort of far enough away from Joseph Stalin. Siberia is not far enough away. Europe isn't far enough away. So finally, the dude ends up in Mexico, and even that is not far enough away because he wakes up one more. Well, he doesn't wake up, but he ends up one morning with an ice pick to the head. Okay, so not even Mexico is far enough away from Stalin. There he was. There he is. You can see that the thing down there, dying, comma, he blamed Stalin. All right, some vocab you should know. Okay, make sure you know these from this section. You should know what the proletariat is. You should know who the Bolsheviks were. You should know, duh, who Lenin was. You should know who Rasputin is. And if you can look up that song, Ashley, I'm talking to you. If you look up the song Rah Rah Rasputin, no, Rasputin and Alexandra never had a relationship, but, you know, it rhymes well, so they're going to put it in the song. But, you know, hey, who cares? It's fun. The provisional government, what their goals were, who they were, a guy named Alexander Kerensky. What a Soviet is, what a communist party was, what the Communist Party was, what it is, I guess. And then, of course, our resident man of steel. Once you know those things, you'll know all the major people and ideas from Section 1. So make sure that you know them. I'm not saying that those have to be in your notes, but people, it would be the smart thing to do. Talk to you later.